My name is James Nelson, and I've been here at Aruba for about 4 years. I currently own the IT infrastructure team and the information security team, and really excited to talk a little bit about our journey in terms of taking phones off of the desk and getting to an all-wireless workspace. So helping me, I have Adam Burns, my esteemed colleague, and also Mick Connor in the back. And Adam and Mick are experts in Unified Communications Link and network, especially Aruba network devices, respectively. And so I'm going to be asking them to help me out explaining our story. So if you don't mind, I have a few notes I have to refer to, so I'll just kind of look back there a little bit. And of course, the ever-present clicker is a good thing. So when I got here 4 years ago, one of the first things that really occurred to me is this intense desire to rip Avaya out of our infrastructure. I know that sounds very brutal, but the more I realized how much it was costing us every time we put a phone on a desktop, every time a new employee came in, we spent almost $1,000 in license and hardware, and it just didn't seem to make sense, especially when we had a lot of other potential options. But it took a little while for us to find the right technology and the right support from the network side, and actually the right champions internally and the processes necessary to actually get that to work. And so I'm going to kind of take you through that process, and we're actually there today, so I'm really happy to say that. You see the graveyard out there with Avaya phones. You'll see some pretty compelling pictures later on with phones off the desk. It's a pretty great story. So why did Aruba choose Lync? In the early days, we've been a Microsoft Unified Communication customer for some time, and when I came on board, we were using OCS. If you guys remember that, we used it for chat primarily. There was a little bit of voice and computer to computer voice and later video, but really instant messaging was primarily what it was for, and a little bit of presence. Over time we deployed Lync 2010, we deployed then Lync 2013, and we added more voice features and more video features, and eventually we ended up with clients that would run on iPhones and iPads, and it started to work pretty well. The key difference, though, the missing piece, was still sort of that voice integration, the PSTN integration, so we added that over time as well. As far as reasons why we like Lync and why we choose Lync, obviously it's the user experience. It's a great unified experience across platforms. It works well, integrates with Skype and other partners. There's, as I mentioned, mobile apps. The integration with Office, with presence across platforms. We're a heavy Mac shop as well as Windows-based. I've actually got both. I run Windows on a Mac. So the integration across those platforms is really great. And last but not least, we have really great integration with our own product line, which provides us so much great quality improvements and telemetry that can help us make sure we deliver an excellent, successful product to the end user.
How many users do we have now across the enterprise?
We're about 2,000. I think if you include contractors, and every single one of them has a Lync account, is encouraged to use Lync. Now usage varies, as it really should, because a lot of those are remote users. They may be in a small office, they may be in a larger office. Right. So not everybody's going to have the same campus experience, but what's great about it is that it doesn't really matter. I actually telecommute at least 1 or 2 days out of the week and from my home office, and this allows me to have essentially a virtual presence with video and audio that is akin to actually being in the conference room. So it's great for all types of users.
And those of us that are full-time commuters in the field, I'm based out of Portland, rarely actually get down here to HQ, and we have a very distributed workforce, of course, and it's my primary communication, both internally and externally, calling out, making my customer calls. So it's not only here on campus, we're seeing a lot of it even in those small remote areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Did I hit the button? I guess I did. So an important piece of actually making this work, of course, is to make Wi-Fi actually reliable. And that's where Aruba's product line comes into play, and the expertise that I have in my team with Mick and others to make this work well. Somebody told me the other day, kind of mentioned this, and I think it's an important point. You don't want to kind of do it both together necessarily, because it's important to have clean RF, and it's important to have your Wi-Fi really buttoned down before you start rolling this out. Otherwise, you can run into some issues with troubleshooting two different problems at the same time. As a link issue, as a Wi-Fi issue. So one of the first things we did is make sure that we had clean RF. Now, as you can imagine, being a wireless company, clean RF is a bit of a problem for us. We have developers all over the place. We have product management, QA, customer service, even IT, deploying and testing access points, and the number of SSIDs here is very overwhelming. So what helped us do that? We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but the products, Airwave and others that provided the telemetry that we needed to be able to visualize where the problems were and to actually clean up the RF was hugely beneficial. And of course, it all kind of started with a policy around, you know, who actually can bring up an access point and an SSID and some governance around that, right? So there had to be some buy-in from a management standpoint as well. The density of clients here, as it is pretty much everywhere, is exploding. I have, somebody just mentioned, Adam said, you know, maybe you should add another device to your collection. I came in with an iPad, an iPhone, a MacBook Air. The multiplier effect is very, very high in our environment, and so we had to make sure that we could handle the number of devices and also the coverage that we wanted to have in order to maintain that high level of quality. Redundancy is another one, right? That kind of ties into density, making sure that not only are we creating redundancy from an AP standpoint, you know, for me standing here and being able to get access to more than one AP, we pulled extra cables to make sure that, you know, if in the future we need to add more density to the environment, that we wouldn't have to pull more cable, we just stick another AP up there and then increase our coverage. Any questions on this slide? By the way, stop me anytime. I'm more of a Q&A kind of guy. I'm not really trying to be a talking head here. So I don't know, Adam, maybe you can talk a little bit to the link question here about the SDN API and how it kind of works in terms of roaming and prioritization and call load balancing.
Thanks.
And introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Adam Burns. I'm the UCC architect here at Aruba. I want to apologize. I'm a server guy in the network world, so just blame me for everything, and it makes everything much easier. One of the things we get out of that SDN API is really the real-time, I guess I want to say, quality of service that we get out of Link. I'm not spending all my time trying to manage all of that. I'm letting the SDN part do that work for me. You know, the QoS, you know, most of you, if you're deploying Link, you know about the QoS policies that you have to put in place. A lot of that gets rid of that. It also allows better access from client server to the AP itself. I think that's the best I can really explain it. You know, I'm not the developer of it, and I'm not the super technical guy. I'm just the guy who deployed it, uses it, and manages it from the Link side.
And I know we're going to be talking a little bit more in detail about this later on, but we'll continue with sort of the story of how we deployed this at Aruba, and we can certainly answer any questions you have, and we'll get to this in more detail later. So obviously, understanding where your hotspots and your quality issues are is very, very important. We're obviously a big user of our own products, and Airwave is no exception. And it really allows us to confirm, you know, those hypotheticals about RF coverage. You know, RF is a science, but sometimes it's a little bit of an art, and you have to confirm and validate your assumptions and your predictions, and that's where Airwave really comes into play. And so when we revamped really the AP layout in this building, is 2 floors, we had to confirm our predictions and our predictives, and that's how we did it. So having a successful pilot is key. Why is that? Well, if your pilot goes south, then frankly, you're not going to have very happy customers no matter what you do to fix it. So starting off on your best foot is very, very important. We have some pretty good UCC experts at Aruba. Adam definitely is one of them. But we still chose to have an SI come in, a system integrator come in and help us with it because we wanted a couple things. One, we wanted to make sure, again, to validate our assumptions. We didn't want to do this in a vacuum, and we wanted to develop a really highly supportable environment that if we went to Microsoft or PSLP or somebody else to help us troubleshoot this, that it wouldn't be something that was arcane to them, right? So we brought them in for the installation, and they also did IT training, which is great. And we handpicked some power users that would help us through the pilot stage and built a team of all wireless champions. And those essentially act as gatekeepers in the organization, and they can be champions and market the value and the efficiency that Lync provides within the environment to other folks and other, where they are or in the meetings they are in. And we recognized early adopters, and we did this by giving them 10 base T 8-port switches. No, I'm just kidding. We recognized early adopters because they did have to work through the wrinkles and the beta and alpha stages with us, and we definitely appreciated that.
Can I throw in a couple comments on that last
please
slide?
Do.
For a lot of you, if you go down Lync, Microsoft doesn't support voice over Lync. They'll support IM, they'll support presence, but if you try to call Microsoft with a voice problem, they'll say, can't help you. That's one of the reasons we went with a PSLP, so that if we had a voice problem, we can call them up directly and say, hey, this is a problem, go fix it.
What does PSLP stand for?
Professional Services Link Provider. I think that's the last time I checked.
I'm going to Wikipedia to check now.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong on that one. So they also, the big thing is coming day 1, day 2, and continue on, is they take a lot of my workload off of me. So when I get these voice calls of complaints or whatever, they can do an end-to-end analysis for me, so I'm not sitting there looking through logs, databases, contacting customers. They make my life a lot easier. And one of the things about recognizing early adopters, one of the things we did is we took those early adopters and we gave them nice headsets, nice speaker phones. We took extra care with them. We said, bypass the help desk, come see me directly. We gave them some perks for wanting to be early adopters and being willing to go through that pain, because there is pain in adopting new technologies.
Is there a question?
Yeah. Yes.
Have you guys standardized on particular devices, at least initially? So I'm curious to hear. I mean, because we all know, and again, sorry, delegates, I beat up the client all the time, right? But we all know all these operate differently, right? If I have Lync on a Mac, it's going to operate differently than a Lync on another device, for example.
So besides Mac and PC, we do have a few users using Pigeon on Linux. We've made some adaptations to our gateway and things like that to support that. In terms of phones, we kind of have a predefined list of them. So we say, here's some headsets, here's some speaker phones, here's Bluetooth-enabled devices, whatever. Go pick one of these. Or if you don't like any of them, go pick one else, but we can't support it. What we actually found, most users, they have a Bluetooth headset piece they already like. So they already paired that with their phone or their laptop and are using what they already have. We only have a handful of users who really want the headset who don't have a Bluetooth piece already. And the reality is, the majority of people use their iPhones for their work phones with the Lync client. That is how a lot of calls get done. So.
Yes, we also recommend if they're going to go and buy something, try to see if it's Lync certified. I mean, it's not absolutely necessary, but it helps a lot because of the soft buttons or the special functions and so forth.
So specific to the iPhones that you mentioned, are you doing FT for roaming for these clients? And if so, how's that working? Is it working well? Challenges?
FT?
Fast transition, 8 to 11R?
Yeah, actually, I don't know. That's a good question. So that's probably more of a networking question. Mick, do you know if we're using fast transition on? Not sure. Yeah, so we'd have to figure that out and get back to you on that.
Paul has got an answer here.
Oh.
Yep.
So question was about roaming, right?
Yeah. Yes. It's 11R support.
So 11R support, I mean, what we have found is not every device supports 11R. That's obviously been a challenge. But one of the other things that we have done as part of the whole upgrade is entire Aruba campus is a flat layer 2 domain, and we have IPv6 turned on. So we're consistently trying to maintain the IP address as you move from one building to the another, and using all the broadcast and multicast control that we have on the controller to suppress and kind of control what is going on and who sees what traffic and apply QoS. With respect to 11R, OKC, obviously there are very few devices. Only Windows devices today support OKC, right? iOS devices do some kind of PMK caching, but the device interoperability has been the primary question or concern.
So that begs the question then, I mean, if you're not doing 802.11r, you undoubtedly have to have some type of issue with your voice, I would imagine.
As your devices are moving and roaming and re-authoring, yeah.
Well, I think what he was saying is we keep flat VLAN space, so it's all broadcast domain. And
Yeah,
so
but when
you end
you move
up.
from AP to
that doesn't
AP,
help off.
Transition from AP to AP, or is most everybody just sitting
Are they
at
static
one
users?
spot and that's where they make the call and
We're
then
on
they
quite
get
a
up and
bit.
go elsewhere?
They do. I mean, the typical mentality is when you're on a conference call, you're typically sitting in a conference room or you're static, right? Voice calls are when we see people having a Bluetooth and walking and moving away from one AP to the other. Video calls, obviously nobody's going to walk around with their laptop. So it's going to depend on what use case it is. When you move from AP to AP, have we seen roaming related issues?
No, we don't see. Here, Dom, our CEO, is example of this, and he does it quite often, is his office is above us. He'll get on his iPad, start a conference meeting down here, walk down the stairs with his iPad and into this room, and not drop, or we don't see any glitches at all from him going through his office, down the stairs, through the hallway, down to here. I've never had a reported case of somebody, their signal being dropped, transferring between APs.
So are you using 802.1x for this wireless network, or are you using pre-shared key?
.1x.
It's X.
1x.
.1x.
It's on our corporate .1x network. We don't have any separate SSIDs for it.
We just use one SSID for the campus for basically everything. Any device that wants to connect, except for visitor, obviously, but for employees, it's all 802.1x radio spec.
And just from
that's probably where going back to the AP design helps, because you have APs that are at least every 50 feet apart. So you always have a good distribution of signal strengths, and so that the clients are able to move, transition to the next AP as fast as possible.
And even sometimes I'll be walking around the building with my iPhone in a video conference, just walking around randomly, just looking, and just seeing if I see anything out of the ordinary, and we'll go and investigate it, and we'll use, I'll be sitting on here on a conference call, we'll have somebody watching Airwave and somebody watching Link all at the same time, and just see if we see something going on. But we don't get any tickets related to, I was standing here and my call dropped. Maybe when they get out near the light rail station, they'll have a problem. But
Sujatha is going to dive deep and do a demo of what we go in and look at in Link, in Airwave as relates to Link, and so we'll go very deep into that.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what this slide represents?
I think, Sujatha, you're probably the best to talk about a little bit about the UCC dashboard.
Yeah, so I'll be covering this as part of the end of the session, where I'll walk through Airwave more in terms of visibility troubleshooting. But what this is trying to tell you is, what happens is every time someone has a bad experience with calls, the first thing they do is Wi-Fi must be bad, right? That's essentially what the first
always blame the network.
Will be,
always blame the server guy. No, blame the server guy.
So what we decided was, how do you predict, or how do you know whether Wi-Fi is a problem or not for your Wi-Fi call quality? So the y-axis is essentially your call quality. And this is also happening for your live calls as well, because we calculate our own UCC score. And the x-axis is your client health. And client health is a metric unique to Aruba. and we have a 0 to 100% scale where we qualify whether the client is having a good performance or not just a good signal strength, but are they having a good performance or not? And that's what this chart is trying to tell you, is a scatter plot where when the call quality is bad, is the client health good or bad? And that way you would know whether you can associate that to a Wi-Fi problem or a non-Wi-Fi problem. Because a non-Wi-Fi problem could be anything from your headset to your wired network to your destination. And so this helps you kind of narrow down the root cause. And in the next release, we are planning to add more metrics so that if you get the MOS score as well, you'll be able to identify whether it's a Wi-Fi problem or a non-Wi-Fi problem. Long explanation, but that's what that
and we can take this UCC dashboard and we can translate that into the QoE database out of Lync. You know, we can drill down by host, match times up, and we can do further in that, as well as the other way as well.
And that's always useful. When somebody calls in and says, "Oh, I had a problem with a meeting," back in the day, well, some years back when we didn't have this telemetry, we didn't have this data, it was just, okay, sorry, we'll just see if we can do better. But now we can actually do RCA, we do root cause analysis, we can fix issues, whether they be on the client side, whether it be a hardware issue, or maybe a client network issue with their ISP if they're at home, or what have you. Or even here on campus, we can identify any issues, and maybe it's a coverage issue or something like that, and deal with it, and then actually move forward and improve the service, which is a great deal better than it was, 2-3 years ago.
One of the good things about the dashboard here is it helps you distinguish between a building-based wireless issue or the guy driving down the freeway 55 miles per hour top down and the dog barking, right? You can tell that it's that guy or it's your wireless issue with help with the UCC dashboard, and you can have a good idea of what's going on.
Explaining to the guy in the convertible with the dog barking that it's his issue, that's another story, yeah. So monitoring trouble, hotspots, trouble spots. This is another area where we have additional telemetry. We can identify users that maybe are having some issues from a visual standpoint. We can send field techs out there. If somebody calls in and say, hey, I have this big meeting and I'm having problems with the meeting right now with the video or the audio, we can kind of see if maybe there's an issue with their client. So it's great to be able to kind of visualize it rather than digging into just a bunch of log files. This is another kind of view of it. In terms of the massive number of devices that are out there, and then being able to kind of pick them apart visually, which ones are having issues. And it may not be the network. Sometimes it's just the device itself. Maybe it's stuck on 2.4, maybe it's something else, or stuck on another AP. But at least you can kind of see what's out there. So what's the result of this whole process of making sure that the network is healthy and that we've got the right telemetry, and doing a good robust pilot, and having champions and early adopters work with us, we end up with fast Lync adoption. Why is that? Because once people realize how easy this is and how successful and high quality their meetings can be, and the addition of combination of presence and voice and video, it sells itself. It's something that just skyrockets in usage as a result. And I don't know if Adam, you have any anecdotes or thoughts you can kind of put behind this as well.
I was actually quite amazed at how fast Lync was adopted here. Being a server guy, an old traditional server guy, somebody would have said, yeah, you were going to do Lync wirelessly 3 years ago, I would have laughed and said, not a chance. We have the proof here, people are using it, and the adoption and the onboarding process is just phenomenal with it. We have a 15-minute, 20-minute training on this for new employees, and they're using it. A lot of it is also, social people at the office saying, hey, here's a trick I learned, do this, or here's an idea, do this. We don't get a lot of end user requests on Lync. It's usually, my laptop is broken, I can't make phone calls, or my desktop is broken, I can't do this, or to that level.
One of the other great use cases of this, just as a side note for IT, is actually being able to troubleshoot end-user computer issues through Lync, whether it be on a Mac or on a PC. The general thing, so we've got a walk-up help desk here, but what do you do if you're remote? Well, we have a virtual walk-up help desk, so they can contact the help desk on Lync, and they can bring up screen sharing session, and they can visually walk them through whatever issue they've got at that time. And it's a tool that the end user already knows and is aware of and comfortable with, and it really speeds resolution of those issues at the L1, sort of the L1, L2 perspective. Speaking again about help desk tickets, when you have a successful rollout, tickets go down. You have people with higher quality experience and fewer issues that we can troubleshoot, do RCA on, and then prevent going forward. And that just means a downward trend in tickets.
As it stands right now, we're probably down to maybe 1 or 2 Lync-related tickets a week. And that's usually how do I do something question. How do I set up call forwarding? It's not problem-related issues.
Quick question. How many desk phone, I don't want to say secretary types because some people don't like that, but office manager, how many desk phone people with traditional multi-line responsibilities do you have?
We have none. Even our front desk reception has a standard Lync compatible phone and uses, believe it or not, the regular Lync client for directing phone calls.
Does she have to answer like multiple lines for?
We don't get a lot of, maybe we'll get 3 or 4 incoming calls at one time, and that's about the max. We have looked at other tools. There are other products and there are physical handsets for doing large volumes. And we did actually pilot a couple of those. And the volume of calls we are getting versus the cost of the devices and managing the device behind it wasn't worth it. So it comes down to how many calls do we get versus what do we need to do.
And we do, to be clear, in the conference rooms, we haven't found a Wi-Fi conference phone that we're happy with yet, and you have to power it over PoE anyway. So that's where you'll still see a wired devices for the conference phones.
And maybe one part of his question was, how do you answer multiple lines with a single Lync line? And that's possible, right?
Yeah, so you can do call groups and workflows and all that within Lync. There are, the built-in Lync is very simple. You can do a lot with it, but you can't do extended complex. There's lots of third-party products. If you have a 200 staff help desk, Lync could do that. There are probably better products for doing it that bolt onto Lync. So, yeah, I think that's, does that answer what you're looking for? Or? All right.
So, what do you get with successful rollout? You get happy users, happy GenMobile users. You can kind of read some of these comments. And I also wanted to add one comment that I got personally that isn't really up here. The quality difference between using Lync and using your cell phone is really quite phenomenal. It's kind of second nature now, and once we start doing it a lot. But when I am doing a Lync call with somebody from the outside, because we'll host conference calls, and they'll come in through a web Lync client or a Lync client of their own, and they just comment that it is just fantastic audio quality comparatively, and it really helps communication when the audio quality is top notch. You've been in those meetings where it's sort of muffled, or it's really low bandwidth codec or what have you, and Lync really makes that much easier and much more pleasant of a meeting experience when those the quality is higher.
We have a question from Twitter. Did we set a deadline for employees to adopt Lync? Did we say
we had a deadline that we had to deploy it? We had a very specific day that on this day we had to have, I think it was like 25 very specific users on Lync 2013 with voice and conferencing and the whole shebang, and by a very specific date. We had about 3 months to get that date, or 4 months maybe, 3 or 4 months.
And for the rest of the enterprise, did we have your phones are going away on
Yes,
July
we
2nd?
did. Our CEO came in about a month after that first date and said, I'm giving IT 2 months to get rid of all the desk phones in this building here. You have 2 months to do it. Once we got, and by that point, almost everybody was already using Lync by that point. So getting the last few stragglers was not a big issue. At that point, it was more, let's get rid of the wires, right? As James said earlier, you don't want to do too many things too often with Lync. You know, let's get everybody using Lync, and then let's cut the cord off of that. We took that very literally, as let's make sure we got Lync stabilized, everybody knows how to use it, HELPDESK can support it, infrastructure can troubleshoot it. Once we had all that nailed down and we felt, all right, we feel confident, our CEO said, all right, 2 months, everybody in this building on Lync, no cords. And we got it done with very little pushback from users. It took a little longer to do all the conference rooms. Most of our conference rooms now have Lync compatible phones in them or Lync room systems in them. And if you've never experienced a Lync room system, it'll change the way you do a meeting. It is literally a one-touch. Go into a meeting room, press a button, your meeting starts. It is that simple.
Plug your laptop in to display on the screen, and it gets shared to all the Lync participants. It's pretty cool. So, just kind of tie off with the original comment I made, which was from day one I wanted to get rid of Avaya. This is the success story there. That's all the Avaya phones that we ripped off of the desks and we stuck them in a cube and took a picture, and it was it's quite phenomenal. It's quite impressive when you're there and looking at how many phones that we were able to take off the desks. And every single one of these represented, again, you know, these were $500 a pop for a license and $400 a pop for the hardware, and then there was a bunch of costs that were associated with it, with PSTN and so forth, that Lync helped us to work through and to save. So we saved quite a bit of money doing this. We'll save obviously a lot more moving forward.
So one of the things about this is, as our Lync environment grows, as we build new offices now, we ship out, you know, a session border controller, a session border appliance, and or a standard edition Lync server, and we ship that out there. We don't ship out phones, we don't ship out any other equipment. It takes, our spin up time for a remote office is a lot less. They have much more functionality into headquarters and other sites, and they get the same experience everybody else has, and IT has a single platform. You know, if you travel, we had, you know, as James says, Avaya. Some sites we have FRSIP, which is basically an asterisk-based phone system. One site wanted to put in
ShoreTel?
ShoreTel. Another one wanted to put in a Panasonic system. So we said, nope, anywhere we go, we put in Lync. Here is a standard kind of office in a box. You know, here's servers, here's the SBA, SBC we use, and here's how you build the standard front-end edition and all the parts you need for it.
And the reason you want all those parts is that it becomes a survivable branch. That's what the survivable branch appliance helps you do. Is and that way, if the cord's cut somehow to HQ, then you can still actually utilize full telephony at that site. They could, you know, a small office could still do Lync all day long as they have an internet connection, but this allows them to kind of lose that and still work. So what was the financial benefit? I talked about that a little bit. Over $2 million saved in infrastructure conferencing and long distance services. You know, you end up going down in those services that you know, it's just pure payment for calling. Lync provides a lot of that, and the more you use it, the more you save, and we've really benefited from that.
So what are you paying on average per user for your Lync costs, right? Because you have to pay for servers, infrastructure, licensing, Microsoft licensing, you know, all that stuff. You've sort of targeted the $900 for an Avaya per user cost, right?
So think of it this way, is if you're a Microsoft shop and you're running Active Directory and you're running Exchange and you're running Lync and you're running those, odds are you're already buying, a Microsoft E4 class license, right? So you're probably already paying for that Lync license. The cost of a Lync server and the OS behind it are very insignificant as the more users grow, right? The more users you have, your price per server goes down, right? The price for your OS goes down. And that's where a lot of the savings comes in.
And we made a decision to virtualize a lot of these early on, which also makes the price go down as well from a per server and per head count standpoint.
Well, sure, but it's not free.
We calculated what it actually looks like.
Yeah.
Server, client, license, all together.
Even virtualization resource, everything.
Right. Yeah. Have we done that analysis on the deployment?
We have that. I don't know it off the top of my head. Sure. We did do that, but your eCal per user is probably like $250 per user just for your Microsoft license, right? Your Windows OS license is probably $200-300, right, per one OS. Your Lync is, I think like $600 or $700, I think, for standard edition. I may be off. I'm sure there's per server. I'm sure there's a bunch of people saying, no, you're totally wrong right now. So I apologize. So the price that we talked about cutting, it's the cost of that phone, the PBX, and everything else. Because we're already paying for Lync. We're already paying for their Windows user cal, their Active Directory cal. The only thing new acquired was really the OS and the application level for Lync.
The question came across, are we still doing SIP trunks out to the remote offices at all, or are we going the VoIP link?
So right now, depending on where you are, India is a very specific, unique case, but we'll pick on, say, Cork, Ireland, right, where we're working on right now, is we have two things we do. One is our SIP provider here that we have in the US can actually get us Cork numbers delivered to here. So we have and when you say call Aruba conferencing, right, you get a number out of Cork, Ireland. Well, that actually dials into a number here. That's one of the great things about a SIP line is you can get a phone number from almost anywhere, delivered almost anywhere. So as we build up Cork, we're using that same provider or a new provider, depending on if we switch, and we just transfer those phone numbers to that SIP location. So now they keep that same phone number, and we don't have to make any changes. Now, if I'm calling from Lync to Cork, Ireland, I'm going over our IP network, right, directly. So there's no additional cost. There's a cost to our WAN utilization on that, right? And I don't know what we're using for the connection between here and there, but that's what we're utilizing for that. So there's no phone call, there's no cost associated to that.
And are those savings part of that $2 million that we tout?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's part of it. A big part of it too is just the downward trend in conferencing services, things like GoToMeeting or global, I guess
level 3.
Level 3 now, yeah. Those types of services which people now just end up going to this, and they can have external parties come in and have a richer experience because they have video and presentation, sharing directly in Lync. They don't have to have like two different services to provide, good quality service.
Right.